Hey everyone, welcome back. We are at Unit 4, Day 3 notes. Today's focus is going to be on converting to slope-intercept form, and our goal is that students will be able to convert equations to slope-intercept form with 80% accuracy. So, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Each letter represents some different part of a graphed line, and we are going to jot that down below. So the letters represent M is slope. We've discussed this in our previous notes. Slope is the rise over the run, right? Or how steep the line is going. The letter B is the y-intercept, which is represented by a coordinate pair, which we've discussed. The y-intercept will always have a 0 for the x value, and whatever b is will be in the y-coordinate spot for our y-intercept. So it's a coordinate pair. And then the x and y, the x just represents an x value on the graph, and the y represents the corresponding y value to that coordinate, to one specific coordinate. And just for a little bit more information, the x value is our independent variable. And then the y value is our dependent variable. Okay, so moving forward, converting to slope-intercept form will make graphing much easier and simpler. This means that you are solving the equation for y, and then that means, right, getting y all by itself on one side of the equal sign. And then we're going to convert to slope-intercept form. We will follow these three basic steps. So in this example, we're going to cover each of the steps we have to do or go through in order to get y by itself on one side of the equal sign. Our first step, we want to check to make sure, is there anything to add or subtract or do the opposite to move away from y? So we look at the same side of y. Where is y located? We want to get it by itself. So in order to get this negative 3y by itself, we have to get rid of that 5x. It's a positive 5x, so we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. 5x minus 5x cancels out, it's 0, and now we're left with a negative 3y. So we want to rewrite this with negative 3y equals, and now you cannot do 12 minus 5x, and since we want it in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, the mx must go first, which in this situation is negative 5x, and then the plus, because it's a positive 12, which will represent our b when we are done solving. So we don't have it yet, we have to finish solving. We finish getting y by itself. So the last thing we're going to have to do, or second to last thing, is we have to multiply or divide by the coefficient of y, or that number that's in front of the y. And again, we're solving equations. So to get rid of stuff, we must do the opposite. So negative 3 next to the y means negative 3 times y. So the opposite will be to divide by negative 3. Now, when we go to the other side of the equal sign, everything must be divided by negative 3. So notice how each piece, each term on the right side has a divided by negative 3. Now what does this equal? So these cancel out, which leaves us with just y equals. Then we have negative 5 over negative 3x. We're not going to put it into a decimal because slope, right, we talked about on day 1, day 2, was rise over run, so we're going to leave it in fraction form. And then 12 divided by negative 3 gives us a negative 4. Okay, last step. make sure everything is simplified. So your slope, specifically looking at that right now, we want to make sure that's simplified as much as possible. -5 over -3 can be simplified, right? Negative over negative is positive. So we have 5 over 3x minus 4. So that is going to be slope-intercept form. We have y equals our m. We talked about that. That's our slope. And then we have our b is -4. Okay, let's go ahead and try some examples. So again, our objective today is just to make sure we are solving for y, getting y by itself, which gets it into slope-intercept form. So our first example here, we're going to go ahead and we want to get 8y by itself, which means we're going to have to get rid of the 4x. So we do the opposite. We add 4x to both sides. We are left with 8y equals, now again, we cannot do -8 plus 4x. They are not like terms, but we want the mx to go first. So we write 4x here. And remember, this sign comes with the 8. So we have 8y equals 4x minus 8. Now y is not fully by itself. We have to do the opposite of 8 times y, which means we are dividing by 8. And everything gets divided by 8. Each term cancels out. We're left with y equals 4 over 8. Simplifies to 1 over 2. And then -8 divided by 8 gives us a -1. So it is now in slope-intercept form because y is by itself. All right, example number 2. We are going to subtract y this time, right? We want to get all of the y's on one side of the equal sign. I'm subtracting y instead of 2y because I don't want to deal with negatives. So 2y minus y is just y. Then we're going to subtract 6 to get y completely by itself. Cancels out. And we have 10 minus 6 is 4. Now y is by itself. This is in the proper form. We aren't going to be graphing anything like this until the end of the unit, day 13. But just so you are aware, this is something that we will eventually be graphing. And it will be representing a horizontal line, just for a little preview and what we're going to be getting into at some point. Okay, let's go to the back side of these notes. And we are going to work on a few problems specifically and then leave a couple for you all to try on your own. So let's jump into number 4. Or skip number 3, go to number 4. Number 3 will be for you all to try on your own in a few minutes. Okay, so we want to make sure we get y completely by itself. So we have to get rid of this 5x. We do the opposite. It is a positive 5x, so we subtract it to move it from one side to the other. 0 minus 5x gives us -5x. You do not need to write plus 0 because plus 0 represents that we are adding nothing to it. Now we have 1/2 connected to y. The way we get rid of a fraction is we multiply by the denominator on both sides. That cancels out. If there was more than one term on the right, we would have to multiply everything by 2, but there's only one term. So we are just multiplying that -5x, which will give us -10x. And there is slope-intercept form for number 4. All right, let's jump over to number 5. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is distribute and multiply 3/4 times 16x and 3/4 times 8y. If you need your calculators, that's totally fine. Make sure you enter this into your calculator properly. A fraction, remember, is alpha, y equals, and enter, and then you can type the fraction in. But 3/4 times 16 gives us 12x. 3/4 times 8 gives us 6y equals 12. Now that we've distributed that, we can now start moving things around. We want to get rid of this 12x, so we do the opposite. We subtract it. And we are left with 6y equals, now don't let this fool you, just because they're both 12s does not mean they are like terms. One has an x, one does not. We cannot subtract those. So we just need to write it and squeeze in the mx to the left of that plus 12 next to the equal sign. Last step, to get rid of that 6, we need to divide, which is the opposite of that multiplication. Every term on the right gets divided by 6. Cancels out. Y equals negative 2x plus 2. Okay. Let's go on to number 7. All right. So we need to go ahead and distribute again. So first up is negative 3 times 1/6. Negative 3 times 1/6 is going to give us negative 1/2 x. Negative 3 times this minus 2/3 gives us a positive 2 y. And then negative 3 times that 2 gives us a negative 6. Okay, now the most efficient way to finish solving this problem, or the way to solve it in the least amount of steps, is we're trying to get y on one side of the equal sign by itself. So instead of moving the x and our negative 6, we're going to subtract the 2y. That cancels out. We're left with negative 1/2 x minus 6 equals negative 2y. Last step, to get y completely by itself, we divide every term by negative 2. And we're left with y equals negative 6 over negative 2. Gives us a positive 3. And then we have negative 1/2 divided by negative 2 gives us a positive 1/4 x. If it helps you out to write it like we've been writing it with the y on the left, that's fine. You can just write y equals, and then our mx, which is 1/4 x, plus our b, which is 3. Okay. Go ahead and pause the video here. Try the other 3 problems, and then come back and see how we did. See you in a few. All right, welcome back. Let's go ahead and check out the answers to 3, 6, and 8. So for number 3, one step, we just had to get rid of that negative 2, so we divide by negative 2. Something to note is just remember to divide each term. Okay, so we're dividing each term by that coefficient of y. So divide by negative 2 for each of them. We get y equals 3 over 2x minus 5. Okay, number 6. This one is another one where y is going to end up on the right side. You can flip everything around if you would like, if that makes it a little bit nicer for you. But to be the most efficient, we add 4 on both sides to get it away from the y, and then we're dividing everything by negative 12. Again, remember, we divide each term by whatever that coefficient of y is. So our final answer is y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 1/3. And our last problem, number 8. Remember, a negative in front means it's a negative 1 that we are distributing in. After you distribute that in, we move the x's to the right side so we can start isolating that y term, and then we divide by negative 4. We're dividing each term by negative 4, and then we get our final answer, y equals negative 3x plus 1. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your day.